So at 25, I was working for a bank at that time, and at 25, he moved me here to Dallas. And so I moved to the east side of Dallas over in White Rock Lake area. And here, this single guy, moving into Dallas, living the life of a single man, always going to church, never not going to church, and always going to confession, but not living the most wholesome life. And God called me to one day. Actually, I know when it was. It was March 2nd, 2002, when God called me to go to a retreat. It was during Lent. And usually for Lent, I usually take up stuff. I don't really give up anything because I'm not really addicted to a whole lot of things. So it's easier for me to take up something, or it's actually harder for me to take up something because I have to give up my time. And so I couldn't think of what I needed to do. But it was right then and there when I was contemplating and praying in church what I was going to do for Lent that God called me. There was an announcement that was made that Christ Renews His Parish was coming to church, to St. Thomas Aquinas for the first time ever. And it's a 3-day retreat, and he wanted me to go on it. And I was like, really? I've never gone on a retreat. See, brothers and sisters, I was baptized and confirmed as a baby. So when I did my first Holy Communion at 7, I didn't need to go any further than that. So my education level stopped. I was stunted at age 7, so I'm really good at second grade stuff. So I went on this retreat. I was a little bit nervous, never been on a Catholic retreat or any type of retreat for that matter. And so I went on this retreat, and it was during that retreat that I felt something different. See, during that retreat, it was the first time that St. Anne's and Capel was putting it on for St. Thomas Aquinas, and they had been doing this for years, so it was a traveling team that put it on. And if you've ever been to St. Thomas Aquinas, the church is separated from the community center. And so we were in the midst of the community center we were in the midst of the church. And we were left there to do adoration and to do confessions and just spend some time with the Lord. And there in the midst of it, I've always gone to confession, so I had no problem getting up, and I walked over to confession, confessed my sins, and the priest said, hey, I want you to pray a rosary. So, yes, that's how bad it was. Go pray a rosary. So, for those of you who have never been to St. Thomas Aquinas, they still have an altar rail, and it is beautiful at their church. And so I went up to the altar rail right in the middle center stage, and I knelt down, and I began to pray my rosary. And after I started praying a rosary, a few minutes into it, I could hear somebody just crying in the background, and I just didn't know what it was or who it was. But it was enough of a distraction that I got up and I went over to that individual and I asked him if he was fine. And he said, yes, I just had a beautiful sight. And I was like, oh, really? What was that sight? He goes, well, up here there is a light, and it's shining on the crucifix. And the crucifix is shining on the tabernacle. And the tabernacle, I followed it down, and there I see you underneath all of this beautiful light. And God just got a hold of me and warmed my heart. And I was like, wow, that was awesome. And he asked me, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm praying a rosary. And he looked at me and was like, what's a rosary? And I said, are you kidding me? Are you Catholic? And he goes, yeah, I've been Catholic all my life, but I haven't been to a church since my first Holy Communion, and I'm not really familiar with all of this. I was like, wow, it's an opportunity. Well, it's a rosary, and we pray it to our Blessed Mother, and we pray to the Lord for forgiveness or just for mercy and love, just to stay connected with the Lord, whatever the case may be whenever you're praying it. I happen to be praying it because that was my penance. Oh my goodness, what's a penance? And I'm like, really, it's been a long time for you. And I was like, well, I went to confession, and I told the priest my sins, and this is what he gave me as a way of saying that I'm sorry to the Lord, as a way to put myself back in God's graces. So he goes, wow, that's crazy. How do you do a confession? And I was like, it has been a really long time for you. So I kind of gave him a little bit of instruction, and, we talked about the commandments and so forth. And then he asked, can you accompany me in the confession? And I'm like, no. But I'll take you there. And so we walked over to the confessional, and I knocked on the door. And it happened to, and I remember this as if it was yesterday, it happened to be Father Stephen Beershank, who I absolutely love, right? I knocked on the door and I said, hey, Father, this guy right here is new. He's not really familiar with the procedures on how to do confession, so I kind of gave him as best as I could. He goes, great, just leave him here, close the door, go finish your penance. So I walked over and I started praying again. And I kid you not, it was like clockwork. The same thing happened again. There's another guy on the other side of me doing the exact same thing, just crying and looking at this vision. I walked over to him, and same thing. What's a rosary? What's confession? So I walked these two gentlemen in this journey to confession. Well, that night during that retreat, there was this wonderful experience of an opportunity to go to adoration at night by yourself with just the Lord. And so I signed up for the 4 o'clock. One of the guys that I helped signed up for the 3 o'clock, and the other guy signed up for the 2 o'clock. And how it works is that we're supposed to wake each other up to go and do your prayers. Well, the guy at 2 o'clock woke me up because he didn't know what to do. He didn't know what adoration was and what the sort of prayers were. So he asked if I could accompany him, and I did. And when that hour was over, he went and woke up the other guy, and the other guy asked if I could stay with him, and I did. And then finally it was my turn. And so I just stayed awake the whole night. It was just phenomenal, but it was a wonderful opportunity to really experience and come close to Christ, to hear him talking to you. So the retreat ended. The retreat, that was on Saturday, and the Sunday comes around, and during the retreat, they ask you to come back as an invitation on Tuesday so you can just talk about your experience on how you felt about the retreat. And so I looked at the invitation and I saw it was Tuesday, and I said, guys, sorry, I can't come to the talk on Tuesday because I'm going to be in the hospital. I'm having an operation done. And I remember as if it was yesterday, Deacon Pete said, what? You're sick? And I said, yeah, I'm sick. I have a problem. We all have enlarged hearts or some sort of heart disease where we have issues. A lot of men in my family have died of heart attacks. To this day, my dad's had 5 different heart attacks, and he's still alive, thank God. But yeah, so I started developing a heart issue, and they were going to put a pacemaker inside me just to regulate my heart. And so I explained to the guys that I couldn't be there. And it was crazy. Deacon Pete pulled me in the center and just asked me to kneel, and I had 32 guys pray over me that day. And it was just a beautiful experience because when I got up, I felt different, but I didn't know what it was. On Tuesday, when my girlfriend drove me to the hospital to go and have my procedures done, the doctor took all of these different blood pressure and all that other stuff, and he's like, well, there's nothing wrong with you. Your normal blood pressure, normal everything. They went ahead and took more x-rays on my chest and found that my heart was different. It was the same person because I have a cracked rib, so you could see the crack in my rib, but the heart was completely different. And I was just like, wow, bit of a miracle has just happened here. And I winded up showing up to the retreat. I went to give thanks to the Lord for what he had done for me. And that started me on this journey that I'm on. And so it wasn't until a few weeks later that as I was discerning what role I would do on the next retreat, that God asked me that I needed to forgive somebody. I had to be the reconciliation witness. And I had no idea what a reconciliation witness was. But it's a person that is asking for forgiveness and being forgiven. And so I told the guys that there's no way, everybody loves me, that I don't have anybody that I'm an enemy with. And they said, yeah, we know a bit of your story. And you've got to reconcile with your dad. Because without reconciling with your dad, how are you going to have connection with the Father upstairs? Reconcile with your dad because your dad left you as a child. Reconcile with your dad because all the different hurts and the times that disappointments when he wasn't in your life when you needed a dad. And so I wrote a letter to my dad, and I waited 6 months until I heard from him, and he finally called me and said, are you done? Can we go back and have a relationship? And I was like, well, okay. But it was during the retreat that I put on for these other men that I ran across this one man whose wife was a Sunday school teacher, and she taught second grade. And she goes, I can't believe what you've done for my husband and the transformation that you have done. And I was like, I didn't do anything. And she goes, no, you've changed my husband's life. And if you could teach him, you could teach second grade. And I was like, well, lady, my education in second grade, my education in church ended in second grade. And so I turned her down several times. And finally I just gave in, and I started teaching the class.